News at Prime. Now, a University of Cape Town survey on vaccine hesitancy shows that mandates are helping to increase vaccination. The study was led by Drs. Maughan-Brown and Katherine Eyal. To share some light on the survey and its findings, we're now joined by Dr. Katherine Eyal, co-leader of the COVACS Survey and senior lecturer at UCT School of Economics. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. What did you find in the study? Because what we're noting is that COVID-19 cases are now on the rise.
Yes, so it is. We aim to be a policy relevant study, so it's good that our timing was great. We came out with data in November, December, and now we have some now, which is giving us, it's not just information on who got vaccinated in between our two survey points, but also the big trends that we can observe among unvaccinated people currently. And so, yes, we did see in a small sample the people who got vaccinated in between the two waves of the two surveys. Yes, very many of them said that they did, one of the things which changed that made them get vaccinated was that there was a mandate that they encountered, or that they wanted to, or that they were maybe looking for a job, and thus they decided just in case of a mandate. However, the other big thing was people were very definitely looking to protect themselves. That was the other big thing that people said to us when we asked them in free-form questions.
What about those who were not vaccinated? What sort of response did you get from that lot of people?
So we came up with a lot of interesting data, and I'm going to say something very obvious. It's all about emotions, and the thing is, what we found is just how deep do those emotions go, and then is that going to be an issue or not? So from our vaccinated sample, the single biggest predictor whether or not you're going to get vaccinated or not was, do you believe that the vaccine works? Do you believe that it will prevent you from dying? So that was something that was a big trend. So then we went to the unvaccinated sample and we checked, okay, how many people believe that that the vaccine works? And the answer was a very low percentage of people actually believe in the efficacy of the vaccine. So that's tricky. That's the one kind of belief which is a real issue. And then the other issue is something we've all talked about, misinformation, etc. And the one big thing is that there are a large number of people, a huge number of people who still are deeply concerned about the safety of the vaccine and concerned to the point of believing, and we're talking about a large proportion of people, not, a few people, who believe that the vaccine may kill them. Now, so where do we stand with this? Where can we go with this? Clearly, information needs to seep through. We need the correct information to come through. Another big finding, unfortunately, that we found was that people don't trust the information from government that they have received about COVID and about the COVID-19 vaccine. So that's tricky. What that means is information is going to have to come out in a way that is trusted. So whether it is through NGOs or just local sources like your local clinic, essentially the government is going to have to think hard and be creative. We're in the second phase or the third phase or wherever you want to say. We're not at the quick win phase anymore of the vaccination campaign.
As you collected this data, was there some form of breakdown on the type of people you went to? Were you looking at different ages, or was there a specific demographic that you had in mind as you were asking the questions?
So it's important to note it's not a prevalence survey, so we can't say that it's nationally representative. However, when we began in November, December, we went for a sample that was large. We've got about 3,500 people to start with. And we made sure that we had broad coverage across provinces, across the age categories for the vaccine rollout. That was really important to us. Across gender, across geographical type of area, and then also across race. So it's a good, nice, balanced sample. So we're able to get a lot of information from those different groups. The one thing to note is that now we actually have, our sample is a big portion of it is young people, because a criterion to be included was you had to not be vaccinated. And more younger people have not been vaccinated yet because of the time since they were eligible.
And also we heard a lot of government officials and experts within the health sector speaking to that very concern, that young people are not going out to get vaccinated because, of course, they don't have much confidence in the system, yet there was a huge risk factor that needs to be really ironed out here, because young people who were getting infected or perhaps asymptomatic, not realizing that they are infected, but then infecting the elderly group, which was seen as very risky.
Yeah. So we very definitely, one thing we actually found is that the most hesitant are not necessarily the youngest per se. This was actually an interesting finding that because we grouped people, we said, when are you going to get vaccinated? Do you have plans? And they said, as soon as possible, or look, I'm still going to wait and see, or only if you make me, i.e. only if required, a mandate or whatever, and definitely not. And one thing is that the size of the more hesitant group has grown, but then the people who are very, very hesitant are actually higher income, they're higher education, and they also display like higher average values of, do they believe that the vaccine might kill, etc. So it's a very interesting group, which means that, again, we're going to have to be careful with how we get information out.
That's quite an interesting aspect. I mean, you speak of higher education and a higher income group, which really, it's not what I expected to hear from you, as you speak about perhaps doing more to educate and demystify some of the myths around the COVID-19 vaccine. So what sort of problem does this now pose? Because we've already seen a batch of vaccines, COVID-19 vaccines, warnings that they were going to expire, and of course money and resources being wasted. Where to from here, especially as we're seeing an increase in COVID-19?
Yeah, so I think we're all quite despondent, right? And I think there is, one reason why people have thought very hard about mandates is because, okay, it seems quick and easy. But again, a mandate will only bite for those who are required to do it. So someone who's not looking for work may not then be subject to a mandate, for example. But, there is actually good news. We have seen that people who were really hesitant in December, about 25% of them in our sample shifted to become more accepting of vaccines. So that was surprising to us, and that was great. The other thing, which is good, I'm not an expert, but I think we all know that antiretrovirals, when they were first introduced, there was a lot of stigma around them. There was a lot of misinformation. They were not regarded as simply a life-saving medication. And it took a while. So, and I think, we all, like government, got very creative in terms of making sure that people could trust that new medication. And I think it's very important to realize that, even if it's just emotive, these emotions are going to have massive financial repercussions, just, in terms of, that part I don't need to explain, I don't think. But just essentially, we need to take this all quite seriously. We have to get people believing that the vaccine works. That's really important.
And health experts have warned of long COVID for those who may not be vaccinated, and the ripple effect on one's health. And, should you be infected with COVID-19 and you're not vaccinated, what then happens to your overall health on the long-term basis?
Yeah, and we have seen this in our smaller vaccinated survey. A few of the things that popped up were that people who saw the effects of COVID firsthand, whether they saw a death or whether they just saw somebody getting very ill, that was one of the reasons that prompted them to get vaccinated. So that doesn't mean we must go around and scare everyone, but it does mean that we should make risk salient. We really need to make people aware of the risk. And that, again, is an interesting finding. everybody thinks that they are low risk. That is one of the reasons that is cited for why they're not getting vaccinated. So essentially that is, we really have to let people realize it's cost benefit. Everybody is thinking about, oh, the risks of this vaccine, but we're not really thinking about the really huge risks to you of actually getting COVID, what could happen to you. So yeah, it's definitely going to be an uphill battle, but I think what we have really added, like I really believe we have added value, is that we have quantified what are the most important things. We now can't just say, people think vaccines might kill. It's like, no, we actually know that it's a large proportion of people. Efficacy, it's a large proportion that don't believe. So we know we have a direction.
Sure. Thank you so much for that bit of information. UCT School of Economics lecturer Dr. Katherine Eyal speaking to vaccine hesitancy becoming more entrenched among the unvaxxed. Really, really shocking. Of course, just listening to the breakdown of the profiles on the people who are hesitant to get vaccinated and the reasons why. We do continue